We welcome you to the podcast that has been named one of the very best in marketing research. This is Research Business Daily Report. Please go to RBDR's exclusive community at the crowdfunding platform patreon.com/RBDR, where you can find out how you can lend your support. I'm Bob Lederer, for more than 25 years, the respected voice in market research. Today is Market Research in the COVID-19 Era, episode number 70 in this special RBDR series. And on it, Anthropologist Grant McCracken presents, I think, one of the more unusual takes on what is going on around us because of the virus. Grant has not been sitting around just observing as the coronavirus has almost uncontrollably spread throughout the United States. In fact, he has been busy studying COVID-19's impact on American families. And by far the most affected person, according to Grant, in the family unit has been mom. McCracken says moms are getting their families through this very difficult time. They have also been reinventing the relationship they have with their daughters, and for the better. And moms are fashioning a new economic trade-off for the family. And all of that has refashioned families, but also members of those units on an individual consuming basis, in addition to brands, media, messaging, and culture. In some cases, pre-COVID life is now, for the most part, unrecognizable. Grant explains.
Hey, Bob, thanks for having me on. As you know, I'm an anthropologist. I study the American home and the American family. I've been doing that for 30 years. It turns out people are keenly interested in this. Oprah had me on, the New York Times wrote me up. There's lots of interest here, but not a lot of knowledge. So that's my job as an anthropologist, is to go into the home, into the family, and see what's happening. When COVID struck, it was clear that this home and family were now subject to extraordinary pressures and difficulties. So I wanted to see how it was responding, whether it was adapting, how resilient was it. And it turned out to be, the story is a happy story. In fact, this family, the American family, is adapting beautifully, generally speaking. So I know this because I did the ethnographic work, which is me talking person to person over the phone with people. I also did survey work, and that survey work says that half of Americans believe the family is actually stronger for having gone through COVID. Only 5% of Americans believe the family is less strong. So instead of the picture of misery I expected to find, what I found myself looking at was a family really rising to the occasion. So the big anthropological question now is, okay, how the hell did this miracle happen? And I think the miracle worker is mom. She's the one who calmed things down, who got people, who effectively rebuilt the home in real time and kept the ship afloat. We know that the American family was transformed around 20 years ago by what I think of as a kind of big bang, with which Americans knocked down the walls between the living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. They put an island at the center of things. They installed a new kind of way of preparing and serving meals, lots more meals coming in from outside. Moms cooking up things, sometimes leftovers, trying to accommodate often a family that was itself this bewildering diversity of tastes. You had people who wanted a paleo diet and people who wanted a vegan diet, and a real variety, and moms struggling to accommodate this. Moms would often serve something up. She'd put it on the island. People would come and help themselves and then move back to their rooms or off into some corner of the great room. And so what was once quite a dense event in the American household, mealtime, was exploded and distributed across the home. And what we see happening is that moms have reversed the Big Bang. They've brought everybody back to a single table for a single event, for a single conversation. They've said to kids who want diverse appetites satisfied, they said, listen, I'm making one thing. You don't want that one thing, you make your own meal. So it's kind of moms a little more large and in charge, and very much more at the center of a family event called the family meal. So, that's a pretty remarkable accomplishment, I think, all in its own. And I think moms would have undertaken it in any case, but they could see this kind of shining opportunity in all of this. I think that one of their motives was, holy cow, I can kind of restore the family to some of its coherence that it had before we began taking it apart. And the other thing she could see was that she could rebuild her connection with her daughter. Daughters had been distracted by three things. They had gone off to college, in which case, of course, moms didn't see them very much. Or as teenagers, especially late teenagers, they would commit to popular culture. They'd be obsessed with Instagram accounts. They'd be all about crafting an image of themselves for their friends and public consumption. In that setting, moms were a bit clueless, and they didn't really get what TikTok was, and they really didn't get popular culture at all. And so they were displaced by popular culture. And in the last instance, the preteen treated mom almost as household staff, right? We're feverishly active getting our kids ready for college. It means sending them off for SAT training and karate camp and a variety of things. And in that world, mom is effectively, she runs a taxi service. And so you had a home that was exploded on the one hand and then frenetically busy on the other. And as one mom told me, this is really, my home was effectively a train station. It was just everybody coming and going. So COVID did two things. It gave you your daughters back, in fact, if they were coming home from college, or it gave you their attention back if they were no longer now preoccupied with popular culture. And it also gave you, the mother, an extraordinary chunk of time with which to work. So they said stuff like, I have my daughters back. I have a second chance to get to know my daughters. And as they began to work with them in the kitchen and at that dining room and out in the garden, lots of people planting vegetable gardens, as they began to go for walks together, they began to make this deeper, richer connection. They began to kind of bind together the separations that were put between the generations. And as one of them told me, she said, my daughter can see me. Which I thought was a poignant way of talking about all the distractions of the American home and all of the ways in which we separate the generations. I think this is going to have huge implications for marketers and for strategists and for planners and for everybody in the business of thinking about consumer taste and preference. And we want to think about her as a decision maker. We want to think about her as the venue through which our influence passes as it enters the household, as it enters the family. We've seen moms engage in are concerned with two things in particular when it comes to food. They've used a return to comfort food in order to get people back to the table, and that takes them back into a traditional CPG territory that they've been moving away from. On the other hand, they're also moving to or confirming their growing commitment to food that's organic and unadulterated, and that's where the gardening and the baking comes in. The influence of the daughter on the mother will push her even further in that artisanal direction. So things are very good for CPG right now, but once we get a vaccine, once we roll back this pandemic, I think we're going to see conventional middle-class mainstream American homes tilt even further in the artisanal, the organic direction. We're going to see mothers and daughters traveling together. We're going to see them going out to restaurants together. This is a new important unit of consumption in the American home. And it's also an opportunity for us when it comes to diffusion and influence. If you want to speak to moms, you should be speaking to daughters. And if you want to speak to daughters, you should be speaking to moms. There is a kind of a connection here, a bridge built between the generations, a new intimacy in the connection there, and information and outlook and values and pouring back and forth in both directions with a kind of constancy. One of the striking things that I heard from moms especially was that they are now making a different trade-off when it comes to certain kinds of consumer decisions. I think this is something that will continue even after the COVID era. What they said to me is, listen, I'm less interested in luxury consumption. I'm less interested in status consumption. I'm less interested in emulative spending. I'm not chasing after the Joneses. I'm just interested in building this family. So there is a kind of, and so they're rolling back certain kinds of discretionary consumption and moving away from some of the things on which, the big ticket items on which they used to spend a substantial dollar.
Hey, have you given thought to your point of view that you'd like to share with RBDR that could be used in this video series? Now, there's no argument that if you do help us, it will be something that we'll be appreciative about. But you should also think about the fact that the video commentary that we will help you prepare is going to be something you can use in numerous ways. One of them, for instance, as a free promotion vehicle for you and your business. But as I mentioned, there are other opportunities. So please email your ideas and feelings to rflbob@gmail.com and let's get the ball rolling. That wraps up today's Research Business Daily Report. If you've made it a habit to watch RBDR either regularly or even irregularly, we want to thank you. And if you find that the time that you're spending watching us is time well spent, well, please do us a favor and your friends and peers as well by sharing our video with them. And we hope you will also consider becoming an RBDR Patreon supporter, which is easy enough to do at patreon.com/RBDR. Have a great research day, and we will